T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Shout out to US ARC and all the US ARC members. If you don't know what US ARC is, do not be ashamed. Simply click on the third link in the description below. Go to usarc.org. See what it's all about. See how you could actually protect your own collection whenever legislation might hit your backyard. You just never know. Things are changing constantly in the reptile hobby, and it's good to know when things are creeping up in your area. So shout out to Phil Goss, shout out to Vanessa, shout out to Jeremy, shout out to all the US ARC supporters and teammates out there. Cannot wait to see how much we fight this year to keep our animal rights. And if you're not a US ARC member, talk to your fellow keepers and just let them know what US ARC's all about, and they're here to protect our animal rights. Shout out to US ARC and all the US ARC supporters.
What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. This is Krista with the Girls Who Love Reptiles podcast. Of course, we got Carly on the on and off weeks. Today, or this weekend, it is me. So episode 67, doing a solo episode. So I hope you guys enjoy. Going to be talking about some veterinary care. It's been an episode I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and I thought now was a pretty good time to do it. So if you are new here, go ahead and click that like, subscribe button so that you get notified to all of the episodes that we have coming on 7 days a week. If you're looking to join the Patreon, I really recommend the Trap Talk Patreon. The link is down in the description below. You get tapped in with keepers from all across the world. It's great networking and highly, highly recommend. So, I'm feeling a little bit going solo, of course, a little bit different. I think I'm going to do the trap intro. So get your dancing shoes on. We'll do the trap intro, and then I'll do some sponsors, and then I'll hop on. We'll get started.
Good.
You ready for do more in the future? Trap Talk podcasts?
Yes.
Man.
Only Trap Talk. Exclusive.
Yes.
Exclusive. Oh.
So stop calling us.
Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the crop, God love it or not. I'm hot from the hop to the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with the rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up with everybody, we do it. Everybody, we do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up, rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up, rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up, rub the spot, get the club to pop. When I come up.
All right, we are back. Never gets old. MJ does a great job with that video. And now I'm gonna play a few sponsors, and I'll be right back.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors.
For over a decade, we've pursued a singular vision, producing the finest breeding stock the hobby has ever seen. From carefully planned pairings to thoughtfully designed environments, every detail is considered. And when you bring one of our animals home, you're not on your own. We provide lifetime husbandry support every step of the way. Whether you're building your first enclosure or expanding your collection, we're here for you. Sundown Reptiles.
Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor, and that is jerseyguysb Balls, father-son duo who are just slaying it in the ball python game. If you're into Sunset, if you're into Monsoon, if you're into Puzzle, this is the page you should be following on Instagram right now. Jerseyguysb Balls are invested in some of the highest and most exciting projects in the ball python game today, such as Tornado and many other genes like Cosmos. So again, make sure you go check them out on Instagram. You can also follow them on YouTube, and definitely go give them a follow on MORPHMARKET. You can find all the links in the description below. And again, thank you so much, Brett, and thank you, John, over at jerseyguysb Balls.
All right, here we go. Hope you guys are all having a great Sunday. Put the banner on, doing a solo episode. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so we'll see how it goes. It is easier having a guest on sometimes, but sometimes you just have things to say. And this is, like I said, an episode I've been wanting to do for quite some time, just about general, what to think about bringing your reptile to the vet, if you even should bring it to the vet. I know the title of this podcast is why you shouldn't bring your reptile to the vet. So I think we'll hit on some really good topics. If you have any questions, just go ahead, DM me on Instagram. I'm super busy with work right now, but I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So again, I just want to start with a quick disclaimer. So this content I'll be talking about is really for educational purposes only. So don't replace it for standard veterinary care. The information that I'm going to discuss focuses on first aid, stabilization, and ultimately some decision-making support. So not in any sort of diagnosis or treatment. So I just want to put that out there. I myself am a veterinarian, like a lot of you guys know, working in biomedical research. I graduated from Purdue University, went there for my undergrad, graduated vet school there in 2021. Yikes, it's been 5 years already. After vet school, I went straight into a lab animal residency PhD program at the University of Missouri. Finished my residency in 2024, then continued and finished my PhD in 2025. And then started my first job just last August, so about 6-7 months ago, focusing on biomedical research. So I don't specialize in reptiles. In veterinary school, we get very, very little reptile information. This has become really important later in the show. But I think in all my vet school, I took an elective of exotic pets, and within that entire class, we had like 1 or 2 lectures on reptiles. So that's an elective. So at our school, there was probably some students that didn't get any single lectures in reptiles at all. And again, I had 1 or 2 lectures on all reptiles. So you can just see how very limited that is. You may be asking why. A big part of schools focus on boards. So after 4 years of vet school, you take a board exam. It's online, typically just standard, questions that you'll A, B, C, or D usually. And those focus primarily on dog and cat, as well as farm or agricultural animals, and a few exotics here and there. But the big thing is to pass that exam so you can get licensed in veterinary medicine. So a lot of schools focus on their education to pass the board exam. And relative, even though reptiles are on the up and coming for pets, most people own primarily dogs and cats and not reptiles. So of course, numbers does play a game. But I think it also matters on where you're out in the country. Like I'm living in South Florida now, so there's a bigger, I would say, percentage of people that do own exotic pets. So again, it just depends on the area that you're living in, and reptiles in general are becoming increasingly more prevalent. So hopefully veterinary schools will start to shift their education to focus a little more, include more about reptiles. I think that would be great, and it would really help in the medicine of these guys. So even though I said I don't specialize in reptiles, I still understand basic animal physiology, stress response that can ultimately lead to disease progression. So this episode, I just want to touch on kind of understanding reptile biology as a whole. We kind of want to just minimize harm and know when to incorporate proper first aid care at home versus veterinary intervention. That's very, very critical to understand. And it's very hard. It's very situation dependent. So why are reptiles different than, say, your dog and cat? There's a lot of obvious reasons, but they are really good at hiding their illnesses. They really compensate when they're ill, so that just to the general eye, it's really, really hard to pick up when they're sick. They are very sensitive to stress, so any sort of transport or improper handling in incorrect environments can definitely worsen the outcome when it comes to the stress response in these guys. So a lot of us work with our reptiles day in, day out. So some of us may be a little more tuned into when our animal is sick, just because we know them so well. However, if you're new coming into this, it's very easy to just miss some of those early signs. And often by the time you do notice something, it's pretty severe at that point. So we're kind of talking about into first aid and what that means. So first aid ultimately is a stabilization. So it's not a form of diagnosis or treatment. And, really what I'm going to focus today is mainly temperature, hydration, how to reduce stress. And there will be a few products that I have recommended over the counter for people that you guys can kind of incorporate in your first aid little boxes. So of course, temperature, reptiles are reliant on temperature for their health. So it's almost foundational kind of medicine for these guys. So gradual correction using thermostats and verified measures is very essential. The biggest thing they did teach us in vet school is prevention of disease in these guys, and that ultimately comes down to husbandry. I think most of us that would agree that most of the problems are due to improper husbandry. So it's really, really important to make sure that you are properly taking care of your reptiles, whether if you're a breeder or a pet keeper. Super, super important. I'll kind of show you a couple websites on here. So first of them will be Reptiles. I actually had her on Mariah an episode. So if you are curious, go ahead and check that one out. I'm going to share my screen here. So hopefully you guys can see the Reptiles. This is care sheet and it's veterinary based care. So you'll just go here, care sheets. If you got a snake, lizard, etc. So then it has all of your different species here. So if you're needing to check care guide, has enclosure and lamps and goes into housing, what type of lighting, heating. So this is, like I said, with temperature, super, super important to just first aid, to just make sure if anything you think is wrong with your reptiles, first thing is to check the temperature. Make sure that that's correct. Thermostats fail, so I even recommend incorporating like a weekly sort of check of temperatures, or even every day is great too. We know things happen, but the more often you check it or have those fail-safe measures, the better. And then it goes into humidity as well, substrate, all this other stuff. But I think it's really important to, go to these accurate care guides when getting a pet or keeping reptiles, so you can double check. It's hard to keep those numbers all memorized all the time. And then another website I wanted to show you is the Association of Reptile and Amphibian Veterinarians, ARAV. I will share that here. All right, I think you guys can see the screen. So you become a member, of course. This is really important, as I touched on in the episode 2, being able to find a reptile savvy vet. There's a lot of different networks and information you can join, resources. So these also have care guides as well. Oh, looks like they're coming soon on this. I think they redid the website, but you can also search like care guide or AV in like Google here. And Mike, let's do bearded dragon, for example. So yeah, here's one, a bearded dragon ARAV PDF. So here's another example of a care guide that I would recommend that's veterinary based. And then I think you stopped sharing there. Okay, cool. Yeah, you guys have probably heard my rants on PetSmart care guides. Definitely don't use a PetSmart care guide when you're figuring out how to take care of your animals. Those two websites I recommend both, like I said, veterinary research based. So that's where I would kind of get started on trying to troubleshoot what's wrong in the environment, because 9 times out of 10, that is the cause of most of our reptile issues. So temperature is a first aid. So like I said, make sure that is in correct range and gradually correct it if that's needed. Dehydration is another big one. Really, really hard to see and tell sometimes these guys, just due to their skin scales, it makes it difficult. But some signs that you can see often include sunken eyes, more wrinkled skin than typical. Again, that's hard. Sort of saliva sometimes will be stickier. They'll have pore sheds. They may appear slightly thinner. And so correcting this would, of course, including correcting the humidity and as well as appropriately soaking the animal. I never recommend just forcing fluids down them. A lot of these guys can absorb the fluids through their cloaca. So again, soaking in lukewarm water, and then of course shallow. I've seen a lot of people just put their animal in too much water and they end up drowning, or they'll inhale the water and then you get pneumonia on your hands. So you just want to be careful and do shallow. So, you know, your geckos and bearded dragons, it's up to their belly, and then snakes, you know, I don't know, up to like a quarter of their body. You don't want them swimming in it. But and as for how long, it really depends. I mean, reptiles, it's a fine balance. You don't want to stress them out. Otherwise, that can worsen things. So I just kind of recommend a soak of like 20 minutes, once or twice a day. If they're really, more on the severe side, you can do it twice a day. But start with once a day, soaking them. And that will usually help with the dehydration. Another big thing are wounds, sometimes from improper lighting causing burns, as well as shed issues, also due to humidity and burns and wounds, etc. So if this happens, you really want to keep the environment as clean as possible, just to limit the susceptibility to infections. We keep these guys, of course, in an enclosed area, so infection is heightened if you're not keeping the cage clean. So usually I recommend just taking out all the substrate and just using clean paper towels. It's really easy to change out and move and keeps things clean. And then avoid pulling the shed around sensitive areas, like around the face, the eyes. I really don't recommend pulling it over the eyes, just to let them shed themselves. You can add a couple harder things for them to rub on. Soaking also really helps. Increasing humidity will help. I've even had people like put their animal, depending on the animal, of course, putting them in like an enclosed box and putting them in the bathroom with the door shut and the hot water running in the shower, and that creates like a steam, and that can also help moisten the shed and help them shed as well. If they've got respiratory issues, it can also help with that. Just because a lot of the times it will help kind of loosen that mucus in the airways and help them kind of shed that out. Of course, it's not going to treat it per se. You'll need antibiotics, but you can use the shower method, not in the shower, but just in the bathroom with the hot shower running, and then that steam will help break down the mucus in the airways. Appetite loss is another kind of first aid kit kind of sign, something that's pretty easy for us to notice, of course, if we're regularly feeding our animals. You want to first evaluate their weight. So that's why I recommend getting like a gram scale, so you can regularly weigh your animal if possible. That way you can tell if they're losing weight. Behavior. So again, the more time you spend with your animals, the better you'll get to know them. So you might notice behavior-wise they're a little more lethargic, a little more laid back. So that could be seen with appetite loss too. Body condition, that's just how either obese or thin the animal is. So of course, if they have an appetite loss, they'll kind of start losing some weight. So you might notice them be thinner. And then force feeding, not super recommended in most cases. Of course, with snakes, we do assist feed, which is a sign of force feeding, but other species not super recommended. I have recommended sometimes with leopard geckos or bearded dragons to put like meat-based baby foods on the snout. Meat-based because more protein, but you can do, of course, like if they're omnivorous, do some plant-based options too. Again, this is just if they're ill. This is not a substitute for their diet, but just putting on the snout and having them lick it off can also help maybe increase their appetite if they're not wanting to eat. And then let me see if I can find a snake body condition scoring. Let's see. Okay, here's a pretty good one. I'll show you this. That can kind of help. Oops. I've seen this one a few times. So yeah, you kind of see here if they're severely underweight, slim, ideal, you still want a little bit of shape here. And of course, if you're going the obese direction, what that kind of looks like. But here's kind of a side view, which I find kind of harder, but I really like to look at, this would be the tip of the spine and how that kind of overlays with the fat. So you want them slim or even, ideal. A lot of people, I think, get hung up on the whole grams thing, which I think does play an important part in health. But, I think the body condition speaks a little bit more for itself. Of course, you don't want a 2 or 3 year old animal weighing a couple hundred grams, but that's for another time, another day. But yeah, that's kind of my tips with appetite loss. In some species like those leopard geckos or lizards, you can kind of supplement their appetite. And then if snakes, you can force feed, just make sure you're doing it correctly. So these are maybe things that you maybe don't want to just rush to the vet for, just because these guys are so sensitive to temperature changes. So think about if you're transporting it, they're going to get colder. That can actually stress them out more, make them susceptible to even more diseases. When they're stressed, your immune system is weakened, which becomes susceptible to other things. There's opportunistic bacteria. So we all have bacteria in our guts and our airway, same with snakes. So those bacteria, which often don't cause issues, but when the animal is sick, those bacteria say, all right, it's time to go. And then they increase and heighten their response, which can make the animal become sick or get respiratory infections, fungal infections, etc. So you don't really want to rush to the vet if they have mild dehydration, if they're having shed issues, if they're, overall stable, they might, lose an appetite here and there, but their weight still stable. They might benefit from some of those first aid recommendations. You want to really, I would say, seek immediate care if they're just really dull, with overall lethargic, where they're open mouth breathing, some neurological signs if they're not your spiders or species that are susceptible to neurologic issues, severe egg binding, I would say, mildly egg binding. I have seen people where they've soaked them in warm water, apply some gentle pressure, and the animal has been able to release like that egg. But I would give it, depends on the case, 24, 48 hours maybe before rushing it. If you have this very severe trauma where it needs stitches, of course, I would take them in. Uncontrolled bleeding, prolapse. I would say that's kind of a gray area. Mild prolapses, I've actually talked to some people over the phone before and kind of coached them through it. You can make like a honey, sugar, warm water paste. Apply that to the prolapse. The big thing with prolapse is you want to keep the tissue moist so it doesn't dry out. If it dries out, loses blood supply, becomes infected or necrotic, that can become systemic, or that ultimately will need surgery if the tissue becomes dead. That tissue will have to be removed. So that's a big thing with prolapses. And then the sugar and the honey will actually kind of draw out sort of the inflammation, in order to, the idea is to kind of reduce the prolapse so you can be able to push it kind of back in. I've had people put like a band-aid around the cloaca to like keep it in for a few days, and I've had pretty good luck with that. Again, it's the severity of the prolapse. If they're coming out where they have even, more reproductive system out or abdominal contents, coming out, that's probably need to go to the vet for that. But more of some of your milder, even moderate ones, you can get the inflammation down, soaking, and be able to sometimes get them that way. A non-reptile vet sometimes will just jump to surgery, or a purse string suture is another thing that they'll do. It's usually just a suture around the cloacal opening to tighten it just a bit to keep the prolapse tissue in, but that the animal can still poop as necessary. So that's typically done in your more severe cases. So this is where it's really important to be able to take your reptile to an actual reptile specialist, just because most vets, like I said in the beginning, aren't trained to work with reptiles. So it can actually be more hindrance than good taking them to the vet. I know it's super frustrating because you're taking them to the vet to heal your animal, but again, it's really important to try to take them to reptile specialists. And then a lot of people are like, well, I don't have one in the area. That's what I think, before you even get a reptile or pet, you kind of want to make sure you have a reptile vet in the area before you get that animal. That's just my personal opinion. I think that's the responsible thing to do. And I think over time we'll have more and more reptile specialists, or those who focus on it, up and coming through veterinary school. But that website, ARAV, I'll actually share it again and show you how you can try to find a reptile vet. This is what I typically recommend for people. Let's see here. Let me go back. Give me 1 second. Okay. Hopefully this is pretty helpful for you guys. Okay, here's ARAV. Resources. Okay, find a vet. This is what I've recommend when I people online, so you can you don't really have to put your name and all that. The biggest thing is their address and of course the radius, how far you want to go out. You hit continue, and then it'll give you a list of veterinarians who are members of ARAV, and those typically have more reptile experience. So that's what I would recommend. If there's nobody in your area showing up on that, I would call, of course, local vet clinics, explain your situation, see if they can refer you somewhere. Most states do have a veterinary school. So again, this is where it kind of, how's the severity. Of course, the longer you travel, the more stress the animal can get into. But most vet schools will also have a reptile specialist on hand. So if you live close to one, that's great, but that's another option too. We'll see if I can continue kind of going. I'll kind of go into like the first aid kit, what I kind of recommend putting in that. So some essential items, I think thermometer probe is pretty helpful to check temperature, an infrared temperature gun. I think most of you guys have one of those, but really recommend one of those. I'll actually show what that looks like. Most of us do know, but I've actually ran to a lot of people online when I'm trying to, we tackle their husbandry issues and they do not know what this is. So I'm going to go ahead and share it. This is your infrared temperature gun here. So really love these. Super easy to use, accurate. So highly recommend that. To check your husbandry, a gram scale. Again, most of us have this when they're weighing babies, but that can help be able to keep, regular measures of their weight. Paper towels, extra hides, a spare heat source with a thermostat. So in case something goes down, you have a backup. Chlorhexidine is one. A lot of us use this for like I use it as part of my cleaning regimen, but I'll show you what that looks like. And let's see here. So Hibiclens, so chlorhexidine, but the common brand is Hibiclens, but there's a chlorhexidine glucose solution. So it's antiseptic, antimicrobial. I really like it for mild wounds, just to get something clean with that. Clean wounds, burns, cuts, any sort of that thing. I recommend the chlorhexidine. You can soak them in it. Again, very, very shallow. You don't want them drinking it. So it depends on the occasion. I kind of recommend just getting some gauze and using the chlorhexidine to clean it. So that, some sterile saline, I recommend you can get that from over the counter. Like sometimes your eye washes are just sterile saline. So I would recommend getting some of that to flush wounds specifically, just to keep those sort of things clean. A clean transport container with ventilation in case you need to take them to the vet. Towels, a lot of people have that on hand. That can actually help insulate your container during transport. And then if you have like a small heating, external heat source or thermostat, you can transport them with that. Disposable gloves, I think, are helpful. Cotton swabs, soft gauze. Those are some big things for the first aid kit that I've recommended. Can do. I really like Manuka honey. I actually use that currently where I work. Share my screen again so you guys see what that is. I don't know if I spelled it right, but yeah, here it is. Some from CVS. Yep. So you can get some of this. Can help with like cuts, wounds, but I like it mostly for like the prolapses and everything like that. And then another one, if I go to like Amazon, terramycin, I really like for eye injuries. It is one of those where, depending on the state that you're in, you might be able to get it over the counter at Amazon, or sometimes it needs a prescription. It just depends on the state. But this is one I've recommended for eye injuries. Like they've got an ulcer, they're shutting the eye swollen. This is an antibiotic that you can get that I really, really like. It does say for dogs and cats, but I have used it in reptiles before. So again, really, really like the terramycin. I think of any other ones that I recommend. Oh yeah. So one of my favorite, I like SSD or sulfur sulfadizine. It's amazing for wounds, cuts. I love it, but it does need a prescription most of the time. So another one you can get that I've actually recommended. It's not SSD specifically, but it got some similar properties to it. Active ingredients. Yeah, benzocaine, so menthol. This one I've actually recommended for wounds or burns. So I had a friend with a reptile with a burn, put this on there with some chlorhexidine and I think it was a monitor, I believe. Yeah, monitor, and that thing healed over the course of a couple weeks. So this is like for burns and stuff like that. I recommend this if you absolutely can't get to a vet. Again, I love the SSD cream, sulfur sulfadizine cream, but that 9 times out of 10 needs an actual prescription. So this is something over the counter that can kind of get you by. That I think is super helpful. I'm trying to think of anything else off the top of my head that I like having in that little kit. I feel like that's what I typically recommend for people. If something, I'm trying to think of anything else like comes to mind. Those are the big things I see when talking to people online. I did do a consulting. I still do it now and again, where I talk to people online with various species, giving them advice. Some of those I get a lot of reptile people, just because a lot of other vets won't do them. But a lot of things I see are shedding issues. I would say that's the biggest thing I see besides cuts and wounds. That and an appetite. And again, it's usually due to like poor husbandry, because a lot of people, go to PetSmart and get pets and don't always do their due diligence. So I think that's why super, super important with us as breeders that we're giving people correct information on how to keep these animals, because I think it will just prevent issues down the line. So I think what I've done in the past with shows is actually print off those care sheets, and somebody buys an animal from me, I send that care sheet with them. It makes your life easier because they don't come to you per se with as many questions. So again, I would do those care sheets that help your life so much. Yeah, that's what I would say. That I'm trying to think of any other cases. I've seen some really bad neglect cases, which is pretty sad. The leopard geckos where they get super, super thin, and they don't often, do that unless they're really just forgotten about. So it's unfortunate, but if we can just kind of help people, teach them how to take care of these guys, it would make animals' life easier, but also, help with client trust and repeat clients. Another one's just like Neosporin. Don't use a kind with like the pain reliever or any kind of steroid or anything in it, but just general Neosporin I've recommended for cuts and things like that. You really don't want to use over-the-counter human medications. Like definitely don't do like Tylenol or acetaminophen or ibuprofen or any of those things. Just because the way the reptile system is set up, their circulation is different with their kidneys especially. So some of those drugs can be super, super harmful to them. They don't process the same drugs that we do. As one of my pet peeves when I actually worked with clients is I would give them a dose and they would just freak out if they were like in human medicine, because they're like, that's way too much. And I'm, for people, I'm like, this is an animal. They metabolize drugs differently. So again, but I wouldn't recommend human medications at all. No painkillers, no essential oils with respiratory stuff. I like the shower method. I have gotten by with using like Vicks Vapor Rub and warm water in the shower to help loosen up the mucus. I found that that's been pretty helpful actually, but no like sort of essential oils or random supplements or anything like those. 9 times out of 10 they don't work. And again, like some of these things can be treated, over the counter, like some prolapses, some cuts, some shedding issues. Egg binding is a plus or minus. Anything, like I said, requiring stitches, you'll need to go to the vet for that mostly, unless you can, learn how to stitch things yourself. But again, really wouldn't recommend that. And then, respiratory, like a lot of people think they can just cure it. Those typically need antibiotics 9 times out of 10. And a lot of times your vet is just going to give them Baytril, which is a pretty big gun antibiotic, but antibiotic resistance is a huge issue in vet med. All these bacteria have just been using the same drugs year after year. Bacteria are smarter than we give them credit for, so over time they can become resistant to antibiotics. So with any respiratory, I really recommend that the vet actually takes like, a swab of the material or gets the material and sends it off for culture and sensitivity. It actually tells you what is growing, and then it tells you specifically what antibiotics it's sensitive to. This is like the very first occurrence from that animal. Baytril, I think it's okay, but if you're getting repeated, you definitely want to get a culture and sensitivity, as well as send out, check for an IDO and all of those sorts of fun things too. But yeah. So I hope this is really helpful. It's kind of like the meat of what I really wanted to talk about. I'm trying to think of any specific cases. Like I said, the monitor with the burn case was pretty helpful. Again, with the really severe, like sometimes they're too far gone to really save, and a lot of us, care and love about these animals, and we can do as much as we can for them. But ultimately, as MJ would say, chalk it up to the game. That's part of breeding and keeping animals is the death part. It's 9 times out of 10 it's going to happen to any one of us with keeping animals. So if you just know that up front and know that you did the very best you can, that's all you can really do. I've seen it a lot with like newborns, like on the puppy and kitten side, where people just get so frustrated at the vet sometimes too that we can't save them. And that goes for reptiles too. Like sometimes as a vet, a very good vet, we do everything we can, but sometimes we just can't save them. Sometimes the animals just don't have the willingness to thrive or will to live sometimes, that not necessarily on the vet. So I would take that into an account too. I think there is a lot of sometimes hate for vets out there that we see. There's a big push in the community for that, especially with rising prices and things to care for animals. A lot of people don't understand why we can't treat stuff for free, or why stuff's so expensive. Everything is going up. A lot of us are coming out of school with hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. So most of us aren't in it for the money. I know a lot of people do have that skewed sense, and some vets may be in it for that. May upcharge. And this is not like a one cap all, but I would say the majority of us do really care about the animals. So I do, of course, want to stick up for us vets too. That most of us want to do the best that we can for any animal. And that's why I think it's you really want to go to a reptile specialist vet, but sometimes if we're the only ones, we give it our best shot, but just know that most of us are, trying our best. We never want to see an animal suffer, and we do this for the passion. We do this for the love. That's why I but that's why I got into it. And it's hard work. This is my first job out of school, and it's taken a lot out of me. Managing people, that's a big aspect of it too, but also the medicine part, being a doctor. It's not easy, but it's a lot of fun. It's very fulfilling work. So definitely give love to your vets out there who are trying. Usually in the chats I see anti-vet, and it kind of hurts a little bit. I do get it here and there, but just try to treat everybody with respect that you can. I think that's really, really important. And if anything, if you can, get a second opinion. I also welcome that. I've recommended that for people. Like, if trust your gut in a lot of sense too. We know these animals best. That's where, as for me in my medicine with clients, I have to, especially online, when I can't really see the pet, I have to trust the client and what they're saying, since I can't examine, the animal in that sense. But that's why I say go with your best judgment, go with your gut. The longer you've been in this and the more experience you have, the better you will be on making those judgments on whether to take your reptile to the vet or not. Join these Patreon groups. A lot of people have experience. They can kind of guide you through on what to do. Definitely don't recommend joining the Facebook groups. A lot of those people will recommend going to the vet, which is, the safety net. They don't want to say information that will get them in trouble per se. But again, I would join groups that are more reptile savvy. People have, done this for many years, have found out what works, what doesn't work. Then they can give you some information on what they recommend too. It's hard, and not every situation is the same. I hope this podcast has kind of helped you in that thinking process of, okay, when you should rush. Maybe other times you should try these reptile more first aid, what you should put in your first aid, and kind of giving an understanding of vets in the reptile and hobby, and why it's hard to find a good reptile vet. You guys have heard me talk a little bit here, but yeah, to be a reptile specific veterinarian after school, you typically have to do an internship. When I was coming out of school, those are 20, 30K a year. I'm sure there are more by now. But then after an internship, sometimes you have to do a residency, another 3 years. Sometimes you're only making 30, 40K, 50K maybe in that instance. So because of the debt, a lot of us just go into private practice with dog and cat, or like me, go into research where it's quite a bit better pay to order to pay off those loans. So there's a lot of things to think about. But again, I think we're seeing more of a positive push towards keeping reptiles through social media. I think most people in you know, a lot of people in vet school, of course, geared toward dogs and cats, but I do think they're more and more interested in the reptile and exotic pets that can do dog, cat, heavily medicine, but know enough to be able to see reptiles on the side. But if you're breeding at a really, really high level, a lot of animals, I really recommend making sure that you have a reptile savvy specialist nearby for those really critical cases of, you know, really severe prolapse, severe egg binding. If you're keeping these kind of niche species that maybe are more specialized, again, recommend a reptile savvy vet nearby for that. So yeah, hopefully this was helpful. If you guys have questions, just reach out. Instagram's open. Always happy to help when I can. Next week will be Carly, so I really hope you're enjoying these back and forth weeks. It's helped me out a lot since just so busy with work right now and just trying to get my bearings straight with that. So I'm gonna do some commercials and then I will sign off. Hope you all have a great week. Enjoy the Super Bowl. I'll probably be wanting, I think it's the Seahawks and Patriots. I've done really bad with keeping up with sports. I've really done bad keeping up with anything recently, but I think it's the Seahawks and Patriots. I grew up a Colts fan, so I always root against the Patriots. So I will have to go with the Seahawks for this one. So again, have a great time with friends, family. Have a great start to your week. Stay warm out there, and let me know how I can help you guys. We'll do this one.
If you're looking for exclusive content, please don't look any further than joining the Trap Talk Patreon family. Some of the best reptile keepers in this industry are part of the Trap Talk Patreon family. As soon as you join the Patreon family, you connect to a Discord. You can also tap into an Instagram group chat, connect with some of the most diverse keepers we have in the reptile hobby today. Shout out to my Patreon members and be ready for Trap Fest 2026. It's going to be one of the biggest events yet. Find all information again in the very first link in the description below. And again, thank you so much to all my fellow Patreon members out there. Sorry for the interruption, folks, but a quick word from our sponsors. Shout out to tonight's sponsor brought to you by ZooMed.
ZooMed is proud to be supporting the Trap Talk Reptile Network. At ZooMed, reptiles are our passion. For over 48 years, we've been creating premium foods, supplies, and habitats for reptiles and other exotic animals. We're a company made up of hobbyists that test our products on the hundreds of animals that we care for here every single day. Whether you're an established breeder or a first-time hobbyist picking up your first ball python, ZooMed has you covered with everything you need to keep your animals happy and healthy.
I'm excited to talk about this new product with ZooMed called the Slither Sense. It is a remote temperature and humidifying monitoring system, which we all know how important temperature and humidity is to your reptile. And for you to have remote access to your temperature and your humidity in your reptile room could really, really be a game changer for the longevity of you keeping reptiles. So guys, make sure you check out that product. Find the link in the description below. Click on it right now. Give me your feedback in the comments below. Let me know how you're liking a brand new ZooMed product.